Oh boy, it's more anime. Once again, I'm here to be your bastion of knowledge. Look upon all the time I've wasted watching all these cartoons, ye normie, and despair, for I already do. Like always, I'll provide brief synopses of the premieres of each new anime this season and let you know whether I picked up a show, put it on hold, or dropped it. Of course, make sure to listen to my verbal recommendations. Just because I didn't pick up a show doesn't mean there's nothing worthwhile there. Cool. Let's go. Niwatori Fighter, or Rooster Fighter, is about Keiji, a rooster whose family was killed by a demon, and so now he spends his days wandering the country, beating the shit out of demons. I found this premiere to be a delight for how it reveled in playing its absurdity completely straight. After the cold open where Keiji saves a kid from getting eaten by a demon, it hard cuts to 1 year ago right into the middle of Keiji having hot chicken sex right before abandoning his partner as she cries for him because he's a cool stoic loner, and I cannot believe that's a sentence I had to write and speak into a microphone. And one has to acknowledge that the exact same script with humans would come off as trite, but because it's chickens, it takes on a layer of camp that turns these otherwise serious moments into comedic delights. I had a smile on my face throughout the bulk of the runtime. That being said, this premiere wasn't perfect. While the over-the-top melodrama but with chickens was a recipe for fun, Keiji's tragic backstory got a little too serious for my taste, so deathly sad that the comedy evaporated and the appeal was lost. From a production standpoint, it's just okay. The use of CG fluctuates from serviceable to stiff, and I do worry that the chicken gimmick, while fun for now, is a little thin to carry a full season of television. Still, I cannot lie, I had a good time with this episode, and it earned enough goodwill that I'm willing to check out where it goes from here. I can't promise I'll finish it, but I will put it on my watch list. Check this one out if you want a silly Billy action comedy. Shunkoshuto Daikosha Haru no Mai, or Agents of the Four Seasons, Dance of Spring, takes place in a world where the seasons do not come on their own. Rather, they are brought about by agents who've been granted the power to make their respective seasons manifest through rituals. The Agent of Spring, Hinagiku, has been absent, and therefore so has Spring, from the world for 10 years, following an as-of-yet ambiguous tragedy. Now she's back, and her guardian, Sakura, is dedicated to seeing her safe as she performs her role. This first episode was beautiful in every sense of the word. Thematically, it was about guilt and grief, how such pain manifests and how it can be channeled to help heal both yourself and the people around you. Sakura feels guilt over her failure of 10 years ago and dedicates herself to making sure such a tragedy never repeats itself. She's dedicated to Hina, but that can manifest as manic obsession. Hina feels guilt over holding Spring back from the world for a decade, manifesting as her cripplingly shy personality, and yet she perseveres when she sees she's needed. A kid they encounter grieves over the loss of her mother a decade prior, manifesting as her lashing out at the people around her. It's a melancholic affair, but all of them are able to channel their pain to bettering each other. Sakura into helping Hina, Hina into bringing about Spring, even the kid into motivating Hina and keeping her mother's grave clean. It's all about finding hope through the hardship. It's also a beautiful show from a production perspective. Soft colors and subtle depth of field effects create pleasant visuals, and the soundtrack helps create the mood. Sad and contemplative during the harder moments, sweeping and majestic during the climactic ritual dance. It all comes together to create a captivating audiovisual experience. This ain't a perfect premiere. I did find the pacing to be a bit fast, like they tried to cram in too much information into too little time. This episode probably could have stood to cut some of the dialogue, let the visuals do the talking, but that is just nitpicking. Aside from that, this is a solid one. Definitely gonna keep watching it. Honestly, kind of rude on Wit Studios' part to come along and casually drop anime this season before the rest of the shows have even had a chance to air. Real Wit Studio move there, huh? Ganbare Nakamura-kun, or Go For It Nakamura, is about, you guessed it, a young man named Nakamura. He's just started high school, and he falls in love with his classmate Hirose at first sight. The premiere chronicles his misadventures as he tries to fight his paralyzing nerves to work up the courage and ask Hirose to be his friend. On the one hand, this was fairly straightforward. Guy's got a crush, and he tries and fails to act on it, and that's pretty much it. On the other hand, god fucking damn, was this the cutest thing I ever did see. It's all executed with such finesse that I really don't care that I've seen this all before. Aesthetically, gorgeous. The retro-inspired visuals are fun, and there's plenty of lively animation to boot. Overall, a feast for the eyes, and those visuals are in service of a narrative that, while straightforward and not in a hurry to get anywhere, does put a smile on my face. There's enough gags to keep me giggling, but more importantly, the script did an excellent job of getting me to care about these characters. Nakamura being down so bad that he turns into a complete disaster is, you know, he just like me for real. But also, the show made sure to characterize his crush Hirose such that we the viewers like him too, and so we're rooting for the two to make it work. For the first half, he's just the object of Nakamura's obsession. Cute, but not much else. But then the second half comes around and the two start relating over Nakamura's furious love for octopi, and gosh golly gee, that shit's adorbs! What do you want me to say, man? This was wholesome as all get out! Yeah, I'm gonna keep watching this one. Highly recommended if you want a cute, low-stakes rom-com. And goddammit, did I just pick up 3 shows in a row? The first 3 of a season? Are my standards slipping? Oh man, this season's gonna eat up my time, isn't it? Damn. Kori no Joheki, or the Ramparts of Ice, is about Koyuki. Following from some vague traumatic drama in middle school, which includes getting teased for her height, relationship and boy troubles, and just generally having a bad time, Koyuki's built a wall around herself and doesn't get along well with others. It's the end of her first year of high school and she only has one friend, Miki. Everyone else is scared at the mere sight of her, of the Ice Queen. However, some run-ins with some cute friendly boys seem poised to change all of that. This premiere was fine. Koyuki's a sympathetic, fun protagonist. You want to see her be okay after all the hurt she's been through, and her dry personality does make for some decent antics. I think getting her right was the most important thing for this particular story to get viewers to buy into it. And this episode made me like her just fine. Almost too good a job. She did have a near-constant internal monologue going, which at times came off as overbearing. I would have liked for this episode to be more confident in its visuals to carry some of the narrative weight. I think it's most telling that the most narratively engaging moment was the narration-less montage at the very end, which showed all the pain that serves as the foundation for the emotional wall around her. That was good stuff. I just wish the rest of the episode was more like that. Everything else was just okay. Show looks fine, sounds good. Koyuki's relationship with her best friend Miki was cute, if underutilized. The boys exist, and that's pretty much it. Based on all of that, I'm not compelled to continue with this show right away. Again, this premiere was perfectly fine, and if you're looking for a well-produced romantic drama this season, I do recommend you check this one out. I can even see myself returning to this show in the future if I've got a free weekend and need something to binge. But aside from Koyuki, I needed this episode to give me just a little bit more to latch onto before I committed to continuing with it right away, a little bit more, which, at present, it does not have. Nigashita sakana wa okikata ga tsuriageta sakana ga okisugita ken, or Always a Catch, is about a young noblewoman named Maria, aka Mimi. After a male heir is finally born into her family, she's sent off to school with her best friend Ida to find a husband. Ida's engaged to one prince but crushing on another, and at a party, her fiancé tries to break it off with her in dramatic fashion, but mistakes Mimi for Ida, and Mimi, determined to protect her bestie, yells at him in her defense. This premiere had one fatal flaw. I fundamentally could not buy into Mimi. Here's a young woman who has spent her whole life preparing to be her family's heir. She's been training, she's been studying, she's put in so much effort, and her father throws it all away at the drop of a hat the instant his son is born, kicks her out of the door, and tells her to find a husband because clearly that's all she's good for now, right? That is an injustice, clearly. But Mimi and the narrative have no interest in engaging with it as such. Shit, Mimi puts a smile on her face. and seems happy to follow Daddy's orders. That's nuts! Mimi's supposed to be this fierce, happy-go-lucky character, and her putting a smile on her face is meant to reflect a strength of character. Instead of being bothered by the injustice done to her, she rolls up her sleeves and makes the best of things. But I mean, no! I'm happy actually to let the patriarchy crush me beneath its heel is not the fun character development this show seems to think it is. It's just fucking depressing, especially for the fact that Mimi just seems to be completely earnest about being fine with everything. Granted, not every story needs to be about smashing the patriarchy, but I tell you what, this one sure should be. If you can somehow look past that, then maybe you can find a fun rom-com in here, but I just can't buy into it. Can't make myself believe that anyone in Mimi's position would react like she did. And when a story's very foundation loses me like that, it's generally impossible to get me back. Dropped. Mamono gurai no boukensha, ore dake mamono wo kurete suyoku naru, or Monster Eater, is one of those hella cheap limited animation affairs pumped out with minimal effort as content rather than produced as art. Story's nothing to write home about. An adventurer guy with limited abilities has his livelihood hurt and is about to be betrayed by the party when the half-length episode ends, ends before the story actually gets started, doing it no favors there. I think in the future I'm not even gonna bother with these limited animation things because they're never worth it. Honestly, I just feel bad for the authors whose works get adapted into this sort of crap. Can you imagine? Hey, guess what? We like your manga so much that we're gonna make an anime out of it. Oh boy, I can't wait to see all the characters I wrote in motion. They're gonna be in motion, right? Haibara-kun no Tsuyokute Seishun New Game, or Haibara's Teenage New Game Plus, is about a guy named Haibara who's lived a dull life and wishes he could redo his teenage years. Then wakes up a month before high school starts and decides to do it right this time. He works out, then makes friends he didn't before, and ingratiates himself with his old crush. Fuck me, this was dull as shit! 24 minutes that felt like an hour. I didn't like any of the characters, ranging from flat, two-dimensional archetypes to just plain unlikable. Haibara himself was never at any point endearing. Opening on him throwing a pity party for himself with an extended woe was me internal monologue about how his life is just sort of whatever made me immediately detach from him. And from there, him being an adult man in a child's body pursuing a romantic relationship with a child is, that's not good, y'all!
It was a child! There's always a kid.
None of the supporting cast are anything to write home about either. The child love interest of the adult in a child's body is just sweet, and that's it. The character with the most personality is a shorty with her own boy squad. But even she's just loud, and that's it. So the character writing is worthless, and the dialogue is also awful. Too much internal monologuing, and even the spoken dialogue is clumsy. Like, hi, let me state out loud the character traits of the girl I call my best friend, like I'm reciting her biography. God, there's just nothing to latch onto here. Honestly and truly, I can't identify a single redeeming quality in this premiere, no reason to recommend it, or anything that anyone might find value in. All of it's just empty. Save your sanity and skip this wish fulfillment nonsense.
Bitch!
Snowball Earth is about a kid named Tetsuo who's cripplingly shy but really good at piloting a giant robot to beat up kaiju. He sets out into deep space for the final battle, acting as the guard for a spaceship with a super weapon. But things go wrong. Everyone dies, his robot friend self-destructs and sends him back to Earth, and he wakes up 8 years later to find that everything's a frozen hellscape. This did not work, and it's all down to pacing and tone. This episode tried to cram way too much plot into way too little time. As a result, it failed to meaningfully build up its characters and their relationships, such that it was hard to care about them. Emotional beats didn't land, and plot beats that should have been exciting or meaningful were glossed over. And tonally, the episode was way too lighthearted. Here you've got a scene where the entire ship full of people die brutal deaths, a moment that should be a jaw-dropping, stakes-raising climactic event. And yet the robot, one of our two main characters for the episode, shrugs it off in a nonchalant tone, and so the moment, instead of being shocking, falls flat. Like, if you want to sell mass death as a shocking event, you probably don't want one of your characters going like,
oh no! Anyway.
This is overall a complete creative misfire, and I cannot in good conscience recommend any part of it. Dropped. Reincarnation no Kaban, or Petals of Reincarnation, is an edgy action romp where you gain superpowers from your past lives by, taking a knife, pressing it against your throat, and, doing an ouchie. There's good guys with powers, returners, and baddies called sinners, and returners fight sinners. A returner named Haito, a badass sword fighter, brings a guy called Toya into the fold at the behest of a girl named John, basically filling an oracle function. Toya thinks he's being sneaky when he agrees to fight with them, when in reality he's evil, planning to steal everyone's powers for himself because he's just a power-hungry meanie. But don't worry, John says it's all according to Keikaku. First off, things I liked. The show looks nice. It's got a neat art style with bold, striking colors. Just look at the use of silhouetting here, like, gosh dang, that's coolio. Also, I've gotta admit, Haito in her sword fighter form, pretty badass. Good character design there. And it's put to good use in some well-animated fight scenes. In the visuals department, I have no complaints. Unfortunately, that's not enough to save this show. Where it stumbles is in its main character. Toya's our point of view, our entry into this world, and he's put to clumsy use for the bulk of the episode as being the recipient of excessive, repetitive exposition, which really should have been cut down. As such, he's sorely lacking in characterization up until the last quarter of the episode, making it difficult to latch onto him. And even when the air quotes twist comes around that he's actually evil, the show doesn't lean hard enough into that twist to make it feel impactful. It lands like a wet fart. This episode... Why is that so funny all of a sudden? This episode needed to do more with Toya in order to make that twist land other than him being an exposition vehicle. Ground us more in his perspective instead of having him just quickly narrate some of it. As it is, if this is the guy this show wants me to be invested in going forward, I'm afraid that's a tap out for me. Maybe if you just want to turn your brain off for some sick action, this show will do it for you. But as for me, nah. Mata korosarete shimata no desu ne, tante-sama, or Killed Again, Mr. Detective, is about a detective guy and his assistant girl. They board a cruise ship on a job tailing some guy. The detective wanders around until he stumbles upon a body, then promptly gets a knife through the throat for his troubles. But don't worry, he's fine. I'm sorry, but this is ass. Probably some of the worst mystery writing I think I've ever seen. We've got detective boy and assistant girl, right? The narrative demonstrates a total lack of respect for the girl by introducing her with a gratuitous, narratively useless shower scene, then proceeds to have her dump just absolute ass loads of exposition on the boy in their office about the case. Then more during the case, and what the show doesn't seem to recognize is that it's accidentally characterized her as the hard-working detective, while all the boy does is hang on to her every word. I mean, think about it. All the information she exposits is information that one would gather as part of the process of investigating a case. She's the one who does all the legwork, all the actual detecting. But instead of showing her investigation like a mystery would do, the narrative treats her as a device to dump exposition and show skin. Just no respect whatsoever. Absolutely thoughtless. God, this is ass. A real mystery story would have shown us the investigation being conducted, the information being gathered, and recognized that the person doing the investigating is in fact an intelligent character worth following. But instead, it treats that character as eye candy for the main character to latch onto and get exposition from. Just clumsy all the way down. Seriously, it's crazy how this girl does all the work and is treated as just the eye candy assistant by the visual and narrative framing. A smarter show would have been intentional in using that setup as commentary on imbalanced workplace dynamics. But this show is dumb as rocks, so it's just infuriating. All that's made worse by the fact that the guy himself is just an awful detective. When he's hired to find a cat, his genius idea to find it is to wander around randomly calling the cat's name. Cats generally don't respond to their names, especially from strangers, which you'd think is common enough knowledge that someone whose job it is to know things would know it, but I guess not. We needed some contrived reason for him to stumble upon the body. Oh, and I'm glad he can just come back after getting killed. I love sapping the narrative of any and all stakes and tension. Genius move there. Don't bother with this garbage. Dropped. Kirio Fanclub is about two girls, best friends, who are in love with the same guy, who hardly exists. And that's it. There is shockingly little going on in this episode beyond what I just stated. The girls have almost no personality beyond being in love with the same guy. The guy himself hardly exists, so we've got no real understanding of why they love him and no reason to care whether their efforts to get with him succeed. There are hints with these photos at the end that they have a fun, exciting friendship when they're not talking about Kirio, but we never get to see that because all they ever talk about is Kirio. And even if the hints here that what's actually happening is Orange Hair Girl is secretly secretly in love with dark hair girl turn out to be true, that's way too little way too late, because none of the rest of the episode did anything to show that they had any interpersonal dynamic outside of Kirio, which is hella shallow. And then beyond that, the animation and overall presentation is dull, and the comedy generally falls flat. It's just a whole lot of nothing. I can't recommend any part of this. Dropped. Long-ass Japanese title, or The Strongest Job is Apparently Not a Hero or a Sage, but an Appraiser, Provisional, opens on a kid running from a monster. Kid just got isekai'd. He accidentally kills the monster, and a voice answers questions pertaining to his assigned RPG job of Appraiser. An elf woman saves him from a big scary wolf, then takes him under her wing. They do a hunt, and he learns a tiny little bit about his skills. First, the positives. I appreciate that this opened in media res, and then didn't immediately flash back to explain how he got here, instead staying in the moment. A lot of these isekais fumble the structure of the opening episode, where they just give you a tease of the world before flashing back and spending too much time in the old world. So I appreciate that this show got right to the point and stayed there. Also, this show had one good joke. But aside from that, the rest of this episode was trash. This show's idea of comedy is a woman's chest being so big it repeatedly bursts out of her clothes. And then she gets embarrassed about it and slaps the protagonist. God, isn't that so funny? Isn't it so funny that a 50-year-old woman acts like a child? Isn't it great that we get to shove the camera repeatedly into this woman's chest? Isn't that so hilarious? Why aren't you laughing? The characterization of the elf woman is trite and infuriating, hell, infantilizing, and the protagonist kid just has no personality whatsoever. World building is at best surface level, you've got a handful of RPG skills, and that's it. There's just so much nothing going on here that I can't even scrape up the energy to be mad about it. Just a complete waste of time. Don't bother. Dropped. Akane-banashi is about, would you guess it, a girl named Akane. From childhood, she's been mesmerized by her father's Rakugo performances. She absorbs them like a sponge and develops a talent for Rakugo herself. In the opening episode's climax, her dad puts on a hype-as-hell performance of a lifetime in a bid for a promotion, only to get expelled for his efforts. Everyone is devastated, but Akane is now motivated. Now, it's her turn to take the Rakugo world by storm, both for dad and for herself. This episode was awesome on every front. Presentation-wise, beautiful. Sweeping soundtrack, gorgeous cinematography and character designs, and some real choice animation and effects work. Shout out to that one POV shot. But more importantly, the writing. Excellent pacing, excellent drama and stakes, excellent character work, just everything is excellent. Akane's introductory scene where she shows off her attitude and her Rakugo skills instantly sells her as a lovable protagonist. Her loving relationship with her dad is superbly established through their banter, through the ways they look out for each other. Dad himself has layers, juggling artistic need with familial responsibility, and thanks to his taking his family, and especially Akane, as his inspiration and motivation, you really want him to succeed, and so the twist of him failing is just as devastating as it needs to be, and moreover, serves as excellent setup for the plot going forward, because now I just have to see how Akane takes things from here. This is an easy highlight of the season. If you want some juicy drama, please check this one out. Yomi no Tsugai, or Demons of the Shadow Realm, reunites Studio Bones of Fullmetal Alchemist fame with mangaka Himoto Arakawa of Fullmetal Alchemist fame to bring you another shonen action romp. In this one, twins Yuru and Asa are born into a village. An elder proclaims that they will control the demons, that they will sunder day and night. 16 years later, Yuru has grown into a hunter, and Asa is kept in a cage. Suddenly, the barrier protecting the village collapses. Soldiers invade and start killing indiscriminately, along with a kid with a demon of her own. Yuru rushes to his sister's side just after a woman seemingly kills her, a woman who claims to be the real Asa. A surviving villager takes Yuru to flee, and helps him awake a pair of demons of his own. This was a good premiere. Not peak, but pretty good. Himoto Arakawa's a seasoned storyteller. She knows how to tell a story visually. That is, show it. I can easily imagine the clunkier version of this where it opens with a lot of narration or exposition from someone, say a village elder, explaining to the children how, in their village, they stay away from modern technology and the outside world because of tradition or whatever. But Arakawa's smart. All she needs to do is show a guy hunting with a bow and arrow, and then looking up and seeing and not understanding what a plane is, and you get it. We're in the modern world, but they're isolated from it. That's robust, wordless storytelling right there.
Tight, yeah!
Characterization took a bit of a backseat this episode, as it was mostly concerned with setting up the setting and plot, but that plotting is enough to establish intrigue. Yes, I do want to know how the dynamic between Yuru and the murderous real Asa is going to shake out, and the presentation is plenty strong enough to keep this an engaging visual experience. Of course it is, this is Bones we're talking about. Cool action, expressive character animation, the works, it's all solid. So, overall, good showing. Strong presentation, solidly paced and plotted. Light on the characterization, but this creative team has the credentials that I'm willing to give a bit of leeway here. Assuming the next episode or two do the legwork to really get me invested in these characters, then we're golden. And regardless, because this is Bones, this is shaping up to be the season's best action romp. So if that's what you're in the mood for, this comes recommended. Mao is not about Mao. He's in it, but later. Our protagonist is Nanoka. A deadly accident 8 years ago claimed the lives of her parents. Now she lives with her grandfather and a caretaker who feeds her the worst smoothies on the planet. After overhearing some goss from her classmate about the old accident, she visits the site and finds herself teleported to an old town. A monster attacks, and finally Mao shows up. She asks for help and he's like, nah, do it yourself. And she ends up accidentally injuring the thing before he finishes it off. She doesn't want any part of this and finds her way back home after he heals her and gives her pills to unblock the powers he senses in her. When those powers awaken, she seeks him back out to get answers. I have to admit, this one hooked me. Love the art style, hard to say no to Rumiko Takahashi, and production-wise, this show puts her art to great use with dynamic character animation, but that's just the surface. Writing-wise, this episode did exactly what it needed to do to draw me in with its characterization and intrigue. If there's one thing Takahashi knows how to do, it's endear you to her characters. And I was endeared to Nanoka within just the first couple of minutes, with her attitude of putting on a smile to power through the hard times. Yeah, at first she rejects the call to adventure like any good hero must do, but then she's drawn back in by the mysteries around her. Her own powers start manifesting such that she suddenly turns into the Flash, and when Truck-kun comes for her, she simply jumps over it. And as a result, she makes the active choice to return to the supernatural bullshit and seek out answers for her own benefit. We want to know what's going on just like she does. That's a relatable protagonist. And really, that's all you need sometimes, isn't it? Solid character writing, solid production. Yeah, this is a good one. Gonna keep watching, and maybe you should too. Kami no Niwatsuki, Kusunoki-te, or Kusunoki's Garden of Gods, is about a guy named Minato. He moves into a swanky, abandoned house as its caretaker and starts receiving offerings from a local god. He gives some offerings in turn, and the god makes his appearance and explains what's what. Turns out, unbeknownst to Minato, his handwriting has the power to exorcise evil spirits, and his arrival helped drive off some. And now he and this god are besties. Then, a local exorcist takes notice of his power and asks for help, and is flabbergasted that this rank amateur who doesn't know anything has more power than him and his colleagues combined. This premiere was just okay. I can't point to anything it does particularly wrong. Heck, I even got a couple of laughs out of it toward the end with the exorcist guy. However, nor can I say this premiere did anything to wow or hook me. It was a chill time and not much else. Minato was just a guy. Nothing to like or dislike about him, he just is. Production's nothing to write home about, it's fine to look at, but nothing special. And that's just the whole thing in a nutshell, isn't it? Fine, but nothing special. For the life of me, I can't think of anything else to say. If you want a relaxing show, you could do a lot worse than this. But as for me, there's just too little going on here, so it's going on hold. Nippon Sangoku takes place in some near-ish future where Japan, after a series of political, social, economic, really every kind of disaster, has regressed technologically and separated into 3 nations at war. A 15-year-old boy named Aoteru gets married to Saki and tries to build a quiet life with her, but she stands up for an injustice and gets beheaded for her trouble, and now he's off to do a war. I gotta be real, people, I found this script insufferable. Dialogue is clumsy as all hell, especially in the first half. It opens on just a crazy exposition dump. All information which would have been better placed, woven more organically throughout throughout the story. Then there's a whole lot of characters telling each other things they should already know just so the audience can hear it, which has the effect of making the characters feel incredibly artificial. Aoteru is at no point a compelling protagonist. Our introduction to him is him bitching to his wife about her choice of wedding dress, and from there the narrative does absolutely nothing to make me believe that they're a loving couple. So the ending scene of him crying over her rings hollow. And speaking of, this is fridging! Literally just fridging! Saki was the only vaguely compelling character in this whole episode, courageous and standing up for an injustice despite the danger it puts her in. And then her entire purpose turns out to just be to get killed, to motivate her much less interesting husband to stand up to be the protagonist. That's just fridging! That's trash! I'm sorry, but that doesn't make me care about him. That just makes me wish he died instead so the narrative could center as its protagonist the character it built up as being actually interesting. Yes, this show has a unique art style, stellar directing, and crazy animation. Production-wise, I will grant that this show is fucking immaculate, which only makes it an even greater shame that such incredible animation talent is wasted on an absolutely infuriating script. I'm not going to bother with this one, and while I can't blame you for checking it out if the visuals catch your eye, I can't imagine anything this story does will ever be enough to draw me back in. Needy Girl Overdose, adapted from the visual novel of the same name, is hard to discuss because its premiere doesn't have much in the way of a plot. It sets up some characters, but as a whole, the episode's more about them discussing ideas in the abstract than about things happening. It's an ambitious, artistic production tackling themes of personal freedom and self-expression, domestic abuse, and societal blindness to individual horrors. It floats dreamily from one idea to the next, with characters monologuing about them in a detached manner. In terms of vibes, it's giving Serial Experiments Lane and the old Boogie Pop Phantom show. That's all to say, for a specific niche of people, this is going to be their favorite anime ever made. But you've got to be in a very specific mood to match wavelengths with it. And right now, I'm just not in the mood I need to be to properly engage with it. Tell you what though, if you are in the mood for something weird and abstract, definitely give this one a watch. And let me know if Kache's sexually abusive boyfriend gets brutally murdered, because then I'll absolutely be on board. Until then though, for my mental health, I need something more straightforward. Kanan-sama wa Akudame Choroi, or Mistress Kanan is Devilishly Easy, is about a demon named Kanan who's lost the taste for normal food and decides what she needs is souls. So she disguises herself as a teenage girl to infiltrate a Japanese high school as her hunting grounds. But the first boy she tries to eat misunderstands and thinks she's propositioning him, to which he gets all thankful, to which she gets flustered, and somehow this equals their dating now, and she gets increasingly flustered and heart go doki doki and whatever. Man, this was just ass. I hated every second of it. Kanan was a completely insufferable character who had no reason to act as she did at any point with the guy. What do you mean this demon woman is thousands of years old but acts like a blushing child whenever the subject of romance comes up? And even if that did embarrass her, how is that a reason not to stick to her original goal? She should just eat the guy. But instead, the narrative is laser focused on doing everything it can to infantilize and objectify her. It's just fucking obnoxious at every turn, and you could not pay me to watch another second. Forcing someone to watch this should be a war crime, a violation of the Geneva Conventions, punishable by a lifetime in prison. Absolutely avoid at all costs. Dropped. Maid-san wa taberu dake, or The Food Diary of Miss Maid, is about Suzume. She's stuck in Japan for a year after the UK mansion she works at collapses, and kills time by being a foodie. And that's basically it. This show was perfectly chill, inoffensive. Suzume was cute and, at points, relatable. Forgetting you locked the door and going back seconds later to lock it again, seeing a cat and immediately having to pet it, yep, that all tracks, so she's fine. And she's even got a bit of an emotional arc where she has to confide her worries in her grandma, and a bit of humanity with connecting to her neighbor. That's all fine and dandy. That said, I feel no pressing need to continue with this show. The whole maid thing has never done anything for me, so when a show comes along where the main character is wearing a maid uniform for no reason, i.e. wearing her work uniform outside of work, which is an oddity the narrative frames as being such, when other characters question it, I can't help but question, why? Why aren't you wearing normal clothes outside of work? And that question is not supposed to matter to this show, where the main character being a maid is the premise. And when you've got me questioning the premise, something's gone wrong. I needed this premise to be justified within the narrative sooner, and it just wasn't. If you don't need this premise justified, if you just want a chill, frictionless time, then this show will do you just fine. But for me, I don't really need it, so on hold it goes. Maho no Shimai Lulutto Lilly, or Magical Sisters Lulutto Lilly, is the latest standalone entry in a series of magical girl shows from Studio Pierrot, which started with Creamy Mommy back in 1983 and has been dormant since 1998's Fancy Lala. This premiere follows sisters Fu and Rui, two school kids who've been a little distant lately thanks to the older Rui being busy and generally having feelings following an illness. Fu's sad about that, then a spaceship shows up and its pilot decides to trust this random kid he just met with magic powers. So Fu sets off some fireworks, then Rui smiles. To my shame, I haven't dabbled in the rest of this franchise, and as a first impression of it, this premiere wasn't a good one. Its biggest problem is that it's slow, with very little substance to show for it. The characterization of both Fu and Rui is paper thin. They're both a little sad, then they're kind of not, and that's it. Nothing to latch onto there. The episode gestured at themes of fear of change and of growing up, only to undermine them when Fu's transformation, which the pilot tells Fu is a version of her that she wants to be, turns out to be a somewhat grown-up version of herself. Visually, the show makes great use of color, but animation is otherwise function over form. That is, there's not a whole lot of it. I liked the soundtrack when it was present, giving off chill, lo-fi vibes, but this episode also had a whole lot of quiet moments, which in a better show would lend itself to contemplation of plot or themes. But here, given how little is going on, it just leaves so much of the runtime feeling empty. Sorry to say, but there's just not much to get excited about here. Cute fluff with no substance. Dropped. Ponkotsu fuki into skato take ga fute kisetsu na JK na hanashi, or the klutzy class monitor and the girl with the short skirt, is about an overzealous class monitor who's constantly getting up in the business of a girl in his school for having too short a skirt. She beats him up for being a douche, then beats him up when he compliments her and she likes it, and starts falling for him when he starts being a chauvinistic prick for some reason, and shows it by beating him up some more. So this sucks and I hated every second of it. This plays a trite old anime dynamic completely straight, where a girl likes a guy and gets embarrassed about it, and she takes out her embarrassment on him by beating him up, and somehow that's supposed to be funny and romantic, but it never is, and it most definitely isn't here. It's the exact opposite, in fact. It's rather deeply unhealthy and frankly worrisome. If these two never spoke to each other again for the rest of their lives, it would still be too late for me to give a single shit about either of them. Outside of their deeply unromantic romance, neither of them are particularly likable characters. The girl's entire personality is just being violently mad at the guy for everything he does, and the guy's whole thing is having a stick so far up his ass about following the rules to the point where he actively makes the lives of his fellow students worse. In sum, nothing in this episode made me care about either of these characters as individuals, nor their burgeoning relationship. Rather, every single thing about them was annoying, and I will be thrilled to never have to set eyes on them again. Dropped. Ghost Concert Missing Songs is about Seria, a young woman living in 2045 during a time when singing, indeed the creation of music by people, is outlawed. Music is only made by some as-of-yet mysterious sci-fi AI-adjacent system called Mucus. That probably sounds better in Japanese. While out trying to have a normal day of shopping and fun with her friends, Seria gets possessed by the spirit of Cleopatra, who uses her body to go around trying to seduce men and do evil, maybe. Another friend of hers calls upon a friendly spirit to grant her the power to fight off Cleopatra, but then Julius Caesar and Mark Antony pop up to help Cleopatra, but then Mucus interferes somehow and has Seria perform a duet with Cleopatra, helping her regain control of her body. Then she tries telling her friends the truth about her being someone who sees and gets possessed by spirits, and they run screaming, and then drones pop up and shoot her and an ally dead. Cliffhanger! So there was a lot going on there, and I'm not quite sure all of it gelled. Someone online described this as a cross between Symphogear and Fate, and that's as good a description as any. From a production perspective, this was a decent offering. There's this one inexplicably, stupidly well-animated shot of Seria just walking down an alley, and once Cleopatra takes over, the action animation is generally pretty fucking sick. The duet with Seria and Cleopatra made for a nice musical spectacle, And that's as far as my praises extend. The keyword there was spectacle. As a spectacle, this premiere was fire in its back half. But as a story, it left something to be desired. Characterization seemed to be generally forgotten in this show's rush to cram in as many ideas and genres as it could manage. Lots of time is spent just observing how this world and its various near-future technologies function. And while I appreciate that much of that was done non-verbally, that alone does not make for a compelling narrative. What little characterization we get for Seria, our protagonist, is rendered moot as she spends the bulk of the back half possessed, i.e. a passive actor in her own story, so there is no real chance to get latched onto her. That all being said, the package as a whole was bonkers enough that I can't write it off as being bad. Its biggest sin is that this opening episode was perhaps too ambitious, trying to cram too much into too little time. But the chaos created by all the spaghetti getting tossed at the wall did, if nothing else, make for an intriguing, if messy picture. If this show can slow down and give us something more firm to latch onto in the coming episodes, then it has the potential to turn into something special. So I'm gonna put it on hold, and if I hear good things about it in the future, maybe I'll return to it. Check it out if you want some wild action.
It makes no damn sense. Compels me though.
Tongari Boshi no Atelier, or Witch Hat Atelier, is about a young girl named Coco. Ever since she was small, she's been obsessed with magic. But the common wisdom in her world is that you have to be born a witch to do magic. And among witches, the practice of magic is the greatest secret. One day, she manages to spy on a witch doing his thing and learns the secret to magic. All it is drawing with special ink. Having gotten a spell book and the right ink from a mysterious figure years before, she puts this knowledge to the test, and the visiting witch saves her just as her experiments crystallize her home and her mother. The visitor promises to teach her magic in exchange for her help tracking down the witch spreading the secret. This first episode was brilliant across the board. It's firing on all cylinders from the opening seconds, with the inky animation and Coco's narration about how people aren't born into regular jobs clearly foreshadowing the eventual reveal about the truth of witches. The scene of her just doing laundry, intricately animated, establishes the relaxed vibes that the bulk of the episode is immersed in, which serves to make the witch's climactic rescue of Coco the most incredible shot of adrenaline I felt from anime this season, made even more impressive by the stellar animation on display during that sequence. The soundtrack is brilliant, mostly using light woodwind to sell the quiet village vibes before swelling up with a grand orchestra in the finale, just perfect. And of course, Coco herself is an endearing protagonist, excitable and filled with a child's wide-eyed wonder at the world, accentuated with expressive character animation which feels like it was scientifically engineered to make you love her. By the time the episode's over, you're fully invested in wanting to follow this girl as she pursues her dreams to become a witch and accomplish her new, emotionally resonant goal of undoing her mistakes and saving her mom. Basically, this might be the most perfect premiere of the season. No complaints, 10 out of 10. So good it makes me mad I never got around to the manga despite it being on my radar for years. Holy shit, please watch this one. Jisho Akuyaku Reijo na Konyakusha no Kansatsu Kiroku, or An Observation Log of My Fiancée Who Calls Herself a Villainess, is about Crown Prince Cecil, a once-in-a-millennium super genius who, at just 10 years old, is bored of life. Then he meets his fiancée, Bertia, who tells him that she knows everything that's going to happen because she's been reincarnated as the villainess of an otome game, and that she's grateful to him for helping her get through the hard times back in Japan, so she's dedicating herself to the villainess role so Cecil can find happiness with the game's heroine. Cecil's response?
Fascinating.
From there, Cecil uses Bertia's knowledge to help stave off a disaster, and she starts falling for him for real. Surprisingly, I did not hate this. It was actually kinda cute. Two-dimensional and straightforward, yes, but mostly inoffensive and fun. The irony of the supposed villainess having a heart of gold and being too dense to see that contradiction was vaguely endearing. The show's generally nice to look at, well-directed, making use of pleasant, bright colors and strong lighting. And thanks to being kind-hearted and taking Bertia's antics in stride, Cecil's a lot more likable than most super genius type characters. Kid actually seems to have a soul. That all being said, I feel no need to immediately continue with this show. While it didn't do anything terribly wrong, okay, no, actually, there was some implicit fat shaming going on, which was ick, so that's one brief but bold mark against it. But aside from that, while nothing was notably terrible, nor am I especially hooked. I think this episode could have stood to humanize Cecil just a little more, and perhaps his superhuman plotting need not have been glossed over in order to build intrigue. That's just me nitpicking though. If this looks cute to you, by all means check it out, and there's a low but non-zero chance I might return to it later, so on hold it goes. Marriagetoxin is about Garo. He's an assassin who specializes in poison, the heir to the Poison Master clan. However, the family needs an heir after him, and thanks to his job, he's kept away from romance and thinks he won't ever have it. So, the family matriarch tries to force his sister, who's happy with her girlfriend, to get married and have children, and Gero's not having that. So while on a job to kill a marriage swindler, he asks for that con artist's assistance in helping him find a wife, and he agrees. Cue failed romance hijinks and some sick shonen action, and Gero and the swindler Kinosaki striking up an unlikely partnership. When I finished watching this, I sighed and said to myself, God damn it, that was good. Fuck. We're only a bit over halfway through the season's premieres, and already I've picked up too many shows. But I cannot lie, this one got me. Gero manages to be at once badass, sympathetic, and admirable. He does cool action bits, his romance struggles are relatable, and his ability to overcome his demons to put his family first makes him easy to root for. Kinosaki's a fun character in part because he sure is gender, and also because we can't be quite sure what his motivation here is. He's a swindler, so maybe he's just doing what he can to save his ass, and certainly that's how it started, but the more he helps out Gero, the more genuine his affection seems to be. How will their dynamic evolve from here? Will Gero find the love he's looking for? And if he does, will it be someone new? Or, unexpectedly, someone right under his nose? I don't know, but that's enough intrigue that I have to find out what happens next. Another solid offering from Bones this season. Absolutely check this one out. Kuresude ni banme ni kawaii onanko to tomodachi ni nata, or I made friends with the second prettiest girl in my class, is about Maki, a needy introvert who can't make any friends. One day, he's adopted by the extroverted Umi, who shares his nerdy tastes, and the two form a mostly wholesome secret friendship, which is probably going to turn into a romance simply for the fact that this show has a romance tag. So, to my surprise, I didn't hate this. For the bulk of its runtime, this premiere was bland, if inoffensive, wish fulfillment. Oh, what if I was a normal guy, but a cute girl latched onto me for no reason and shared all my hobbies?
Sure, Jan.
And I'm not sure what the title is doing, making objective judgments about the inherently subjective attractiveness of its characters, and production-wise, there was nothing going on visually to write home about, and Maki is such a personality-less protagonist that you could have replaced him with a block of concrete and gotten the same result. One has to wonder if the narrative would have been substantially improved by simply removing him and focusing instead on the established dynamic between Umi and her best friend Yu, and the opening scene of the class introduction was some of the hackiest writing I ever did see. Just the most convenient excuse to introduce characters to the audience by having them monologue about themselves instead of more organically showing the audience who these characters are throughout the story. But, for all of its faults, I can't bring myself to hate this one, because I have to admit, the couple of scenes we get of Maki and Umi just hanging out and having fun are surprisingly wholesome. Just two people getting along, sharing their hobbies without any external complications. It's cute and fun. So much so that I very much wish they just stayed friends going forward. That this was a narrative about how the right friends can help you grow, bring out the best in people. But no, this is a romance, and I really don't need to see these two locking lips. So I'm dropping this, but don't take that to mean this is a worthless show. If some part of this looks appealing to you, you might want to check it out. Replica date koi wo suru, or Even a Replica Can Fall in Love, is about Nao, an exact biological replica of a young woman named Sunao, who can blink Nao in and out of existence whenever she pleases. So whenever Sunao is sick or doesn't feel like going to school, Nao goes in her place. Over time, Sunao has retreated into herself and become generally unfriendly, while Nao remains outgoing and personable with her friend in book club. And now, a new arrival in the club, a boy, is poised to shake things up. This premiere did not work, and it's all down to the egregious violations of that classic storytelling advice of show, don't tell. Telling can work, but only when carefully employed in limited amounts. Or, I guess when you're Wes Anderson.
Good evening, Mr. Sugar, said the man behind the desk whose job it was to never forget a face.
In this case, so much of the story is narrated by Nao that very quickly you realize you're not watching a story but being exposited lore. Nao drones on and on about the rules of being a replica and why it happened and how they're doing today, and all of that information would have been better conveyed by, writing scenes that show these things happening. It's a visual medium animation. Use it to show things. Thanks to its insistence on telling everything, this premiere was a mostly dull affair, failing to do anything to endear me to the characters or story. That's a drop from me. Liar Game is about a college student named Nao, no relation, who's so completely and utterly honest that she cannot conceive of another human being dishonest. She's quite suddenly pulled into the Liar Game, game. She's given a fuck ton of money, and so is her opponent. If 1 month ends and she still has that money, the money gets returned to the game masters. If she steals her opponent's money, it's all hers. But if her opponent steals her money, she's in debt to the game masters for the amount stolen. Her opponent turns out to be a trusted old teacher who swindles her out of her money, much to her devastation. Knowing she's out of her depth, she enlists the help of a professional swindler, and after seeing her persistence and naivety, he agrees to help her. He pushes Sensei to reveal his true colors, her to use her brains, and comes up with a plan. As always, the most crucial question I ask myself when watching these season premieres is, do I want to find out what happens next? Well, let's see here. I like now, kind and caring for her ailing father as she is, even if her naivety is so extreme it turns right into idiocy. She's walking a fine line between endearing and grating, but at the very least, I do want to see how she gets the money back. Sensei is so cartoonishly over the top in his being evil that I suspect seeing him get his comeuppance will put a smile on my face. On top of that, the narrative is tightly paced, so watching this episode I was never bored, and I can only imagine things are going to escalate from here, given that one of the letters now got from the Game Masters clearly labeled this as Round 1. Sure, it's not the most impressive production on the planet, and there's some redundant narration, but it still did everything it needed to build intrigue. So, in answer to that crucial question, yes, I do want to find out what happens next. I'm gonna keep watching. And if you want a thriller about a high-stakes game, this'll do you just fine. Tadaima, ojamaseramasu. Or, Pardon the Intrusion, I'm Home, is about Rinko, a young woman who's living the otaku dream, with a nerd pad all her own, a steady job, and all her favorite anime waiting for her. Except whenever she tries to watch one, an asshole neighbor pounds on her wall. Another neighbor hears this and decides to do something about it, and that just pisses off the asshole even more. So he Kool-Aid Mans through Rinko's wall, revealing himself to be her favorite mangaka. And now he feels entitled to waking her up and eating her food. And the air quotes good neighbor starts making moves on her and passing himself off as her boyfriend in a bid to air quotes protect her. Yay, romantic comedy? Sorry, but this just wasn't funny in the slightest. If anything, it was deeply worrying. It reads like a woman who was socially conditioned to be unable to stand up for herself, being at the mercy of two toxic men seeking to take advantage of her. And I can't see the humor in that. Production-wise, it looks competent, but nothing special. Rinko makes some fun faces and is a cute character design, but that doesn't mean much against a narrative I find actively uncomfortable. For being a comedy lacking in appreciable humor, I can't find anything to recommend here, so I'm dropping it. Megami Isekai Tensei Nani ni Naritai desu ka? Ore Yusha no Rokotsu de, or My Ridiculous Reincarnation, is about some dipshit who dies stupidly, then gets into a cycle of reincarnating into various stupid things, overseen by a monotone goddess who's sick of his shit from the moment she meets him. On the one hand, I want to appreciate this production for doing something a little different, for trying to be weird. It takes a stab at a variety of animation styles, so at the very least, it's never boring to look at. On the other hand, this is meant to be a comedy, and it's almost never funny. The main dynamic of the protagonist being a dipshit and all his tomfoolery bouncing off the straight man goddess runs out of steam real quick, then just keeps going and going and going. I got a couple of vague chuckles out of this premiere, but that's not near enough to justify spending more time with this. I award this show a "You Tried" sticker and nothing else. Dropped. Otaku ni yasashi gal wa inai, or Gals Can't Be Kind to Otaku, is about Takuya, a nerdy introvert who can't make any friends. One day he's adopted by the extrovert— oh, hang on a second, whoops, my bad. That was the script for the second cutest girl in my class show. Let's try that again. Takuya is a nerdy introvert who can't make any friends, but it turns out one of the most popular girls in class shares his hobbies, and so they start hanging out, and wait a minute, this is the same show! Sure, the details are different. Now he's got a kind gal to befriend, and the model who's into the nerd shit is really trying to keep it on the down low, but at its core, this is basically the same thing. A sad introvert being adopted by some kind extroverts to help him come out of his shell. And for what it is, it's perfectly cute and wholesome. Yes, it's wish fulfillment, but it's hard to be mad at that when your wish is, what if people you thought would be mean are actually just really nice and kind and now you've got friends? This is even a bit of an ambitious production, with a cool POV shot and some expressive animation on Takuya to give him some personality, all of which does give the show an edge over its sibling. I'm putting it on hold because I've already gotten the point from this first episode, and again, I don't need to see Takuya locking lips with either of these two, but if you're looking for a cute, wholesome romance, I would actually recommend this one as it was generally sweet. Hidari Kiki no Eren, or Eren the Southpaw, follows three artists: Koichi, who aims to make a living as a graphic designer, Sayuri, who's got a thing for Koichi and wants to live a life out of the spotlight, and Eren, a talented graffiti artist who, thanks to a death in the family, seems to have given up on her dreams of being an artist. Things come to a head when Koichi is inspired by Eren's art. They fight, him yelling about his passion and her unable to believe that such dreams are attainable. On paper, this should be interesting. It's tackling themes of artistic struggle, of trying to make it with your art versus accounting for the practicalities of living in the real world, the passion it takes to pursue a dream and how crushing it can be to see it slip out of your reach. Koichi and Eren serve as perfect foils for each other, the dreamer and the quitter pushing each other to new heights. That all should make for compelling drama. And shit, I'll say it, Eren looks cool as fuck. I should be into this. I should want to see what she gets up to. And then, after it was over, I realized that throughout the whole premiere, I did not feel a single emotion, which is a big problem when you've got a drama all about how characters feel. Where did this episode stumble? Maybe it was in dividing its time between 3 point-of-view characters, where one of them had significantly less going on than the other two. Maybe it was in its rush to gloss over establishing why Koichi and Eren love art enough to get into big messy fights over it. Whatever the case, something is missing here that would help me really connect to these two, and until that missing element is added, I'm not feeling compelled to continue with this one. That being said, there was just enough intrigue built and competent production values on display that I can't call this a bad show, so I'm putting it on hold. And if anything about this catches your eye, I do recommend giving it a shot. Who knows? You might find something I didn't. Kujima utaeba ie hororo, or Kujima, Why Sing When You Can Warble, is about a normal kid who stumbles upon some tall-ass penguin thing who demands he feed them and decides to live in the kid's house and in general be a nuisance to the family. This show is supposed to be a comedy, but I didn't find it terribly funny. The humor hinges on the tall penguin thing being loud and obnoxious and everyone else reacting like normal human beings to that walking embodiment of cringe, which is a dynamic that can make you laugh maybe once or twice, but after that, with nothing else to back it up, that one joke gets stale quick, and boy did it get stale. In short, I did not jive with the humor, and nothing else in this whole production is remotely notable, so, lacking literally any singular element worthy of recommendation, this one's a drop from me. Himekishi wa Babaroi no Yome, or The Warrior Princess and the Barbaric King, is about Serafina, a knight who gets defeated in battle, kidnapped, and told she's being made to marry her kidnapper. After already dealing with sexism at home, Sera's reaction to this is to be embarrassed and squeal like a child. Okay, so this fucking sucked. The writer's barely disguised fetish indeed. The whole conceit here is to take a strong woman and humiliate, objectify, and infantilize her, and I'm not here to kink shame, but boy do I personally fucking hate that. It can't even visually commit to that bit. Why is the strongest knight in the realm thin as a twig? Because this is the author's fetish and he can't get off to a woman with meat on her bones like a warrior probably should have? And beyond that, why in Christ's name would a strong, disciplined knight who's been training with the sword since she could hold one react to the most meager of compliments from her kidnapper with teenage blushing? Why would she take the news that she's being forced to marry her kidnapper with more such blushing? That's meant to lighten the blow, I guess? To play off the horrific as comedic, but it fails at that goal because it's still completely fucking horrifying. And pretending it's not is the sin that earns this show its spot in the dump of shame. Burn in hell, please.
Gotcha.
Wait.
Kami no Shizuku, or The Drops of God, is about a guy whose dad was a famous wine critic. Dad dies and leaves behind a fortune in rare wines, but it's not his son's just yet. His son never got into wine, so Dad adopted another wine critic a week before his death and set up a game for the two of them to play, where they'll have to identify some rare wines, and the winner gets the fortune. This premiere didn't work for a few reasons. As a production, it was a tad limp with stiff animation. Story-wise, it's a letdown in terms of pathos and structure. There was a gesture at emotion when the protagonist poured wine down the sink, crying that his dad cared more about wine than him, but that was it. The rest of the episode didn't do anything to make me care about him or any of the other characters. And the narrative structure was a tad whiplash-inducing. Twice or thrice it would do this thing where it would start a scene for half a minute, then flash back to earlier the same day, in world by minutes or just a few hours, to explain how we got there. Doing that once at the start is maybe okay to hook the viewer, However, doing it multiple times within the same episode is nauseating. So this adaptation is a bit of a wash, but don't write off the property. Apparently the manga itself has some cultural significance in that it got popular enough to boost some wine sales, and it inexplicably has a very well-received live-action adaptation on Apple TV, a French-American-Japanese co-production. So if a drama about tasting wine sounds like it's up your alley, you might want to check that out instead, or even the original manga. As for this anime adaptation though, skip it. Awajima Hyake, or 100 Scenes of Awajima, is about the students of Awajima Opera School, an academy for the performing arts whose attendees hope to make it big on the stage. The opening episode centers two point-of-view characters, Wakana, who's just moving into the dorms and learning about class politics, and her roommate Kinue, who's haunted by the memory of a theater friend from middle school who chose another path. This premiere was beautiful. Everything about this production created a calm, inviting atmosphere, from the soft colors to the quiet soundtrack. I knew I was in love with this show when the color palette went blue and we had this one incredible Sakuga shot of just the camera zooming in on Wakana to highlight just how blown away she is by the girl singing in the next room. There's plenty of drama to be had, yes, but this show isn't out to overwhelm you or make you sob. Rather, it's here to make you dream, to make these characters slowly worm their way into your heart as you contemplate the lengths they'll go to achieve their goals, the hearts they'll break, and wonder at the price of dreams and artistic integrity. And the characters, perhaps slowly but almost certainly, will win you over. Wakana's easy to like as our entry into this world of theater, just an affable, impressionable girl searching for her place in the world. But then there's Kinue, who pursues her passion with such fervor that she risks overwhelming those she loves, sucking them into her orbit like a black hole, and still she can't help but persist. I want to see how she grows. I want to see how she and Wakana connect. I want to see what Wakana decides to make of her life. And, given the long-ass list of main characters on my anime list, I want to see what other stories this cast has to offer. For its lovely presentation, likable cast, and chill drama, this show gets a hearty recommendation from me. Hokuto no Ken, Fist of the North Star is...
Fist of the North Star.
In the year 199X.
Damn! What a disappointing villain!
But will you be okay?
The damn bastard who killed all my men!
Oh, fuck.
Catch him!
Kill Ao, or Kill Blue, is about an assassin who gets stung by an artificial wasp produced by some probably malevolent bio-research company and wakes up as a kid.
You're a kid now! You're a squid!
His boss gives him a new job. Start attending this middle school to make sure it's safe for his daughter. This freaks the assassin out, as he's terrible with kids, but it turns out he loves learning. This premiere was acceptable. The protagonist is a bit of a unique character in that, having skipped school as a kid, he falls head over heels for learning, which is, if nothing else, amusing.
Mom, I'm not doing any homework. I don't do homework anymore, you know this!
Me personally, going back to school for kids as an adult is my literal actual nightmare, so I can't say I relate, but good for him, I guess? And the action is just whatever. There's two scenes, one at the start and end. In the first one, they turn out the lights, so there's not much to see, and the second one in the climax is too brief to really get going, but there's a little bit of excitement. And since we just came off making fun of the worst dub in decades, I want to highlight this specific delivery of a botched denial as being a sublime dub performance.
Me, I'm just an ordinary, typical first-year middle school student. Coming to school every day like a normal kid.
How do you do, fellow kids?
Beyond that, I can't say this anime did anything to really grab my attention, but nor was it particularly bad, so I'm putting it on hold, and like always, if anything about this grabs your eye, you might want to give it a go. Kamina Botan, Yoeru Sugata wa Yuri no Hana, or Botan Kamina fully blossoms when drunk, is about a college student named Botan, living in a dorm while working on her industrial engineering degree. One of her dorm mates is Ibuki, who loves drinking but hates drinking around others because she gets the hiccups. Botan happens upon her while she's drinking and hiccuping, and charms her by expressing interest in her drink and not minding the hiccups. So the two form a bond over drinks, and from there, their relationship with each other and their dorm mates can only grow. This This premiere was a warm hug. I had a soft smile on my face the whole time. Production-wise, it does exactly what it needs to do. It's not out here to wow you with amazing sakuga, but with soft colors and a light soundtrack, it lulls you into a relaxed mood. And with limited but precise expressiveness in the characters, the episode slowly endears you to each of them, lending you tidbits of nonverbal insight into their personalities and desires. I love the mischievous smiles that come over Botan when she starts tipsily flirting with Ibuki, or Kanade's upturned eyebrows and warbling mouth when asking Botan for advice, showing a nervousness breaking out of her usually cool exterior. It's details like those that really help sell these cartoon women as believable people. And of course, the story, low stakes and down to earth as it is super sweet. Ibuki slowly opening up thanks to Botan's kindness, helping her overcome her fears, fills my heart with joy. I want to see where these two, and indeed the rest of the cast, go from here. So I'm going to keep watching. If you want a relaxed, sweet show with a hint of romance, definitely give this one a whirl. Kuroneko to Majo no Kyoshitsu, or The Classroom of a Black Cat and a Witch, is about Spica. She idolizes the sorcerer Claude, who once saved her life, and so wants to be a heroic sorceress herself who saves people. To do that, she needs to enroll at a magic school. Unfortunately, she seemingly has no magic talent whatsoever. Then, she stumbles upon a talking cat who agrees to help train her, but it's a trick because he's an asshole and only wants to use her to undo his curse and get his human body back. The cat turns out to be Claude, of course, disillusioning her maybe a bit of his greatness, and it turns out she's the only one who can heal him, but only if he commits to training her until she's a top-level mage like him. This premiere was, it looks okay production-wise, and Spica makes a host of expressive, sometimes amusing faces throughout. The show has, if nothing else, energy in spades. Tonally, though, it was a bit all over the place. It's part serious character drama where Spica's trying to grow into a commendable hero, part batshit comedy where the camera's being shoved into her panties for some fucking reason, and she's being made to kiss a cat's butthole. And it's that last part where the show really loses me. The key to undoing the curse, at least temporarily, is Spica channeling her healing magic into Claude by kissing his butthole, which is inherently ludicrous, but then it's meant to be this big dramatic moment in the climax that illustrates Spica growing more mature or something, but it can't be that because it's so fucking stupid, and so this show is breaking my neck with all the tonal whiplash. A better version of this show would, I don't know, respect its main character more, but it doesn't, so I don't respect it. Maybe you might find this show's manic energy amusing, but I don't. Dropped. Aishiteru Geimu wo Owarasetai, or I Want to End This Love Game, is about two high schoolers, Yukiya and Miku, who've been in love with each other for years and made a game out of getting the other to blush by confessing, but they'll never admit to being in love for real, or being actually moved by a confession, because that means they lose the game. And I just lost the game, so you just lost the game, and me referencing that old meme just now was far more entertaining than anything this premiere had to offer. I did not jive with this at all. I found both the main characters to be insufferable. When all the drama hinges on people simply refusing to communicate, then I feel my will to live slowly draining. Their love is assumed by the narrative framing, not grounded in anything real or explored in any meaningful depth, so I had no reason to be invested in their romance. And even if the prospect of watching two kids endlessly flirting with each other while pretending they're not affected by it somehow appeals to you, the sheer idiocy on display in their inner monologues is enough to make me want to never hear from either of them ever again. Miku, what do you mean your pride as a girl depends on getting this one boy to like you? Get some fucking standards. Believe in your own self first, why don't you? And even if the writing wasn't entirely ass, the pacing is awful. It opens on an establishing shot of the town they live in that drags on for a full 30 seconds. It's still going. It's still going. Yep, it's still going, before two more establishing shots of Yukiya's house, dragging down the pace. Rather than hit the ground running, this show just hits the ground and lays there twitching. It spends way too long on a flashback monologue from Yukiya that just explains things we could already intuit from the previous scenes, thus coming off as redundant and dragging down the pacing even further, and that malaise is felt for the rest of the episode. And then the presentation ranges from barely acceptable to outright infuriating, from a narratively useless, weirdly voyeuristic shot of Miku's rear end, to randomly switching to 3D models for shots that aren't even that distant. A visual treat, this is not. The premise is, from what I understand, reminiscent of Kaguya-sama Love is War, a show which I have not watched but has a good reputation. So if anything about this at all speaks to you, just watch Kaguya instead. There's no reason to look at this one, especially when its premise has already been done better. Dropped. Dandelion is about angels tasked with tracking down earthbound spirits and exorcising them with their guns. Two such angels, Tetsuo and Misaki, spend the day helping the spirit of an old man track down his wife so he can apologize to her, and hijinks ensue when the wife's soul turns out to be missing and mistaken for a soul in need of exorcism by another angel. They get their tearful reunion and goodbye, then back in the underworld at the office, a big cheese comes along and tries to intimidate all the angels for missing their quotas. This premiere was marred by tonal clashes. On the one hand, it's trying to be this meaningful reflection on death and regrets, on valuing the time you have and making the most of it. And on the other hand, it's trying to be a screwball comedy where old ladies get run over by trucks.
Grandma got run over by...
It's not impossible to have both. What I take issue with is when comedy is used to undermine the more serious emotional beats. When the old man has a serious moment of self-reflection and almost becomes a real character, the moment is immediately undercut by Tetsuo making a bit out of it, robbing me of the chance to get emotionally invested in him. So when the time comes for the big emotional climax, I just don't care. If comedy undermining drama isn't something that bothers you, this may be up your alley. But as for me, I'd appreciate it if the show took itself just a little more seriously. There's nothing offensively bad here, but nor do I have any investment in this whatsoever. So that's a drop from me. And that's it. All the spring 2026 anime at your service. This season I've picked up 11 shows, and among those, the best of the best, which I recommend everyone check out, my pantheon of peak, are, in no particular order, Akane-banashi, Go For It Nakamura-kun, and Witch Hat Atelier. Between those, you should find something to your liking. Thanks, once again, for sitting through my extended ramblings about endless cartoons. For follow-ups on these shows and more, stick around for my end-of-year wrap-up video. Hopefully, I'll have another scripted video out before the next anime season rolls around. Fingers crossed. Until then, thanks again for watching, and I'll see you in the next one.